What up, Leedz? All right, how we doing? It's been a while, a couple weeks. But we are back. A very special guest today, friend, artist, and restaurateur chef, Avi Shemtov. Here we go. He looks like he's early even. Give me 1 second, Avi. I gotta get this thing going here. Posting this. 1 second. Pin comment. Shout out everybody else in the room. We're gonna get right into this. What up, morning run? Let's get this. All right. Oh, nice window. Does he know that I just accepted his request? And now we're looking at his nice window and his nice view.
Sorry about that.
That was great. That's a first. That's a first. How we doing, buddy?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
Good, good. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Leedz Entertainment Podcast, brought to you by the Chubby Chickpea. And today we've got founder, rapper, chef, restaurateur, Avi Shemtov. How are you, brother?
Living the literal dream.
Is it a dream or is it? Because
The last 2 years have been weird, but I always said, like, a long time ago, I used to tell people when I was like, my first job out of college was at a sign company. I used to tell people I would never do the same job 2 days in a row if I hated it. If the second day sucks, just move on. And I haven't had 2 bad days in a row yet.
Oh, you got dogs in the back, I see.
Yeah, I have a Yorkie. Hey.
Yeah, you might want to just so you know that background noise will get picked up. So I don't know if there's anything you can do about that for the dogs.
I can try.
Otherwise, you'll hear barking all over this interview.
Yeah. Give me 1 second. 1 second.
Yeah, sure. So we are on break. The Yorkies have taken over the interview. Shout out Jesus Jones. Shout out K Major. Shout out Geechee the Goblin. Barbecue Mensch. Okay. Jeff Gable. Justin Gordon in the building. Guru in the building. Shout out. Beza. Everybody else. Sorry to, and I have a dog too. I just didn't want you to hear barking all over it.
No, I totally get it. He's better some days than others.
Yeah, aren't they all? How do I lower these comments because they're like in my way now? I don't know. So, anyways, so yeah, man, I was thinking about we've known each other for 15 plus years. Has it been now?
Yeah, probably about 15, 16 years.
I met you because Salim of at the time it was Eclectic Collective.
Yep.
It became morphed into
Bad
Rabbits.
Yep.
It was like, I'm working with this artist, Avi. I really want to get him involved. And I was just kind of starting out with shows, and we started working together then, and we did a lot of shows together.
Yeah, we did a lot of shows.
I was trying to remember which ones you were on, but there was so many I can't.
It was a lot.
Did we do?
I feel like I think like to some degree our music tastes at the beginning were a little different. So like I feel like it was an education in underground hip hop for me, going through all the people I opened up for. So like Pace won twice, I think. Nice. That was like, I tell people to this day, I'm like, I think Pace One might be the nicest MC I've ever seen live. And that was just like the poor guy, like by the time he comes out, there's like 15 people there that like, but they're hardcore Pace One fans. I'm trying to remember who else. I had this list in my head the other day too, because I was thinking about the same thing. I'm like, there were so many just like different shows. And then there was one of the hip hop fests one year at downstairs. I think I opened. And it's funny because like I've been listening to your podcast, and Boston's such a small city. I feel like there's so many people, even not through music, that you have on that are doing their thing. Like you had Oak Lone Tree on, and I was in college when some kid I went to Northeastern for like 2/3 of a year and got expelled. And it was bad. It was sort of a bad situation. So people told me like you can't reapply to college right off rip. So I went to community college for 2 semesters and then went to UMass Boston. And at community college, there was just this random kid who invited me out to a party in Waltham. And it was just at this, he was like, yeah, it's my boy. At the time, he was Okie Doke Lone Tree. Yes. And it was just this like house party. These kids were all like 3-4 years older than me. And then like 2 years later, I saw that he opened one of your hip hop fests. Yeah. And to me, it was like, that then became like a goal for me. It was like, I need to get on there. I saw you had Cam Meekins on. I wasn't familiar with his stuff, but his brother owns an English muffin company, Stone and Skillet. It's kind of a big deal in the Boston food scene. And it just kind of connected a couple dots for me there too, because I've seen him post about his brother, and then I saw him on your stuff. So, it was just kind of funny seeing.
Yeah, I mean, I try to branch out as much as I can, It's funny because you talk about the Boston hip hop scene, and like back then, it was kind of just one thing, really. I say this all the time, like you either in or you either worked with it or you didn't, and it's not anybody's fault. It just was what it was. The different styles that have merged out of hip hop since then, since 2005, has really branched it out that you can do many different styles. But back then it was tough. It's like you either open it up for Pace One or Underground, or it's like commercial, and there's really nothing in between at that point, So like your music was kind of reflective, and you had a lot to say. It wasn't always standard hip hop stuff. So I think that probably was a bit of a struggle for you to open up on some of these shows, because there's some pretty deep, thoughtful tracks.
I appreciate that. Yeah, it's funny because, like, I'm happy with what I've done, like, in my life, and I'm happy with where I'm at. But I do look back at, like, nowadays. So it's kind of funny because one of the very last shows we did together before. So, like, I went away for, like, 6 years, and not went away. People are going to think I got locked up.
Avi went to jail.
Yeah.
You wouldn't get a liquor license if that was the case.
That's true. That's very true. But no, like, I just got so busy in opening restaurants. And then right before the pandemic, I just was like, I want to do this again. And I came and did a show with you. And then the pandemic hit. I was, like, going to get back heavy into it. But anyway, one of the last shows we did when I was younger was the Sammy Adams record release party. And it's funny because I look at, like, sort of how music has changed on the, like, coming up side of things. And I'm like, that was a turning point to me. That was like a time where I feel like if I was 10 years younger and had kind of come after, say, a Sammy Adams or somebody like that, things in Boston would have been a little different for me. I feel like, for me, it was like, I was on all these shows with folks who, like, you were sort of either like the Slain right hook type, like, or you were kind of gutter. And there wasn't necessarily a space at that time to kind of be, I would never consider anything I ever did frat rap, but I think, like, I might have, the depth of the stuff I was doing might have appeared differently juxtaposed against frat rap as opposed to juxtaposed against, like, gutter hip hop, which I'm a big fan of. And I think, like, I was sort of just like a not yet made it commercial sound, which doesn't always fit in underground.
No. And that was a big issue with a lot of people, artists in that era, It's funny because you kind of stop or take a break in 2010. That's when you're talking about frat rap, you're talking about more suburban rap and all this other stuff kind of takes off at that point. And then you see the evolution of social media where people are able to promote themselves better, income streaming, all that other stuff that really allow people to go into their niches and find their audiences. But unfortunately, that all happened after you stopped.
Right. No, exactly. So it's funny because do you know Rosewood Bape? Do you know who that is?
I do. Yeah. The name sounds familiar.
Yeah, so he like writes for a lot of people in the industry. He's out in LA. He's doing cool things. I just saw him randomly in a Millie's video the other day. But so he started working for me at the original Chubby Chickpea when he was 16, and him and this other kid Jordan, like, I was still doing shows, and so, like, they were kind of into what I was doing. And they're the first time I ever heard Sammy Adams, for example, was like they were into that. That was like all over college campuses. High school kids knew that music. The first time I ever heard Webby,
Chris Webby.
Yeah, Chris Webby. Yep. I was like, I mean, I liked what he was doing, but it, you know, there was a jealousy factor for like, what the hell? Like this wouldn't have 5 years earlier, this would have got laughed off stage. And now people are paying attention because he's nice. Like if he's nice enough, it kind of changed a little, but I'd already opened a restaurant and like, I'm working 100 hours a week. I can't pivot back off of that. I've got money in it and it is what it is.
So I want to talk about the restaurant because in 2010, you decided you're going to open up the Chubby Chickpea, which is originally, it's originally a food truck, correct?
So it started as a brick and mortar in Canton Center.
So it was a store, a brick and mortar.
Yeah, okay. 1,200 square feet, 12 seats. And I sort of like, my dad's a chef. My dad came over from Israel in 72. And then he washed dishes till he could open a restaurant. He opened and closed restaurants my whole life. So I was in real estate at the time. And my dad signed a lease on a space like right next to a condo that I just bought and moved into with my wife. And he then had a heart attack and was gonna have a triple bypass. And I was involved financially in it. So we were gonna have to sell it for pennies 6 months after we just opened it. So I just kind of convinced him to just let me have it. And I just put a banner up, just said the Chubby Chickpea coming soon. And we just kind of like on a whim. I mean, I honestly had no idea what I was doing at all. The first day I opened, I realized I didn't put money in the register. Like that was like the first transaction. I was like, oh no, I didn't put money in the register. And so we like toiled at that for 2 years and we started getting good reviews, some press, but no sales at all. So that's when we opened the food truck in Boston.
Now talk to me about the difference between the benefits of having a food truck and the negative side of having a food truck. Because I see a lot of them out here. I deliver food now during the pandemic and I go to some food trucks sometimes. So I mean, I see them.
Yeah. So the food truck game is like, if you do it right, you basically eliminate a lot of the overhead that brick and mortars have. And I own restaurants, so like I see it from both sides. Like it's tough. Some restaurateurs get frustrated. I'd be frustrated if I paid downtown Boston rent and taxes and food trucks could pull up. But basically you eliminate
just don't mean to stop you. Boston real estate commercial, it could be anywhere from, I can speak for Cambridge, would be as low as $30 a square foot up to like $60, $80 a square foot.
Right, exactly. And that's the thing is that like in these places where one time I remember I looked up Union Oyster House, who was like right across the street. When food trucks first popped up in Boston, it was a Menino project. And Union Oyster House was like a loud voice that was sort of anti-food truck. And so just on a whim, I looked up like what they were paying in property tax annually. They're paying $46K. We were paying $25 to sit across the street from them.
Yeah. No wonder they didn't like it.
Yeah, I'd be pissed, right? Because like at the end of the day, they still did 300 people at lunch. We did 150, but they used to do 450. And they need that whole 450. They're paying people. So I understood it. But the upside of the food trucks is that you're basically just open when you're slammed. So like you're mobile, you go to these places, you're there to be open when you're killing it, and then you shut it back down. So for us, we've always had brick and mortars while having the trucks. And so like prep is happening at home base, but the trucks are just like today alone, like I had 2 trucks out for lunch and like one served 50, but it's prepaid guaranteed. So like, we charge a certain amount for that. And then the other served 200. And now the day for the trucks is done. That staff's done for the day. They're done being paid. And it's a good business from that perspective. Obviously the downside is you have to be a grinder. Like if you're not going to be out there hustling, it's definitely harder to grow. Whereas like with a brick and mortar, if you get into the right location and you sort of do the job every day, it'll grow because people know where to find you. With the trucks, like there's definitely added work in the marketing side of things and making sure your website's tight and that you're good on social media, which I haven't always been. So, but the Chickpea sort of been at it for 11 years and we've grown to a certain amount. And so we're busy.
Yeah. What about the congestion and the tight quarters of working in a food truck? Because I've seen it a couple of times. These guys bumping into each other and slamming each other, and it's pretty hectic in there.
It's a tight space, but it's funny because I talk to other chefs that have never worked on a food truck, and they'll kind of say that too. And I'll point out to them, like, think about in a service how much you're actually moving. When a big kitchen. Like you might be working fryer, I might be working grill, someone else might be working pizza station. I'm not really moving that much. You're not moving that much. They say that on average, it's something I was taught kind of early on average, every step that a line cook has to take during service, like a repeated step, will cost you 7 covers of capacity hour. So like kitchens are sort of designed for not a lot of movement. And I just think like food trucks are a real efficient use of that space. Like on the Chubby Chickpea food truck, we have 3 deep fryers, a grill, and then like a sandwich station. And basically like one person's at each station. So you shouldn't be bumping into each other if you're doing it right. But it happens.
I go to a lot of restaurants. I pick up a lot of food, DoorDash and stuff like that. And I've seen some very tiny ass kitchens, even in brick and mortar.
For sure.
One place in particular, there was, the size of a bedroom kitchen, 5 guys working in there with everything.
Yep.
Dishwasher, all that stuff in one room.
Yeah.
So it's intense heat, and these guys are just, I don't know how they're in unison. They're getting around each other by inches, and it's just, I'm shocked. I'm shocked that people can work under those conditions.
It's a pain in the ass. And then when you add in during COVID, you add in the masks, like you lose all that. Because when you're in a busy kitchen, with people you've worked with, so much of it is just like visual. Like I can see you and me were reading each other. It's harder to do that. It's harder to talk. It's, I feel for folks that have to wear masks at their jobs, for kids that have to wear masks at school. And whenever people complain about it, I always tell them, like, try doing it at 114 degrees in a kitchen. It's hard, man. Your throat's sore after service because just from breathing that hot air constantly. But obviously we do it. It's sort of what the game is right now. But yeah, it's congested.
Yeah, and then add on a dinner rush to it. Or a lunch rush.
No question. Yeah.
I have a lot of admiration for you guys for working under those conditions. It's because it's intense. And I applaud you for it because it's those tight quarters, it's heat, it's stress, it's all this, and then never mind you trying to make a buck with it because most restaurants fail.
Right.
Like I've seen over the last year. Never mind COVID, a lot of places open up, I wouldn't say over the last year, over years of seeing restaurants open up and be done in 6 months.
It's crazy. It does happen. I think that's a combination of 2 things. Like, first of all, it's a crazy hard business, but also it's the kind of thing that like everyone thinks they can do. So
there's like a level of ego to it. Like you'll eat my food, whatever. I have such great taste that you're just going to automatically come into my place and buy it.
Right, or like somebody out there makes great pie, and so like their friends are all like, "You should have a pie place," and they open a pie place, and it turns out like it wasn't the play, but it happens. It definitely happens a lot.
Yeah, I've seen it a bunch, and I know I worked in the Middle East nightclub for 17 years, which had a restaurant in it.
Yep,
and that owner, it was owned by brothers, and one of the brothers strictly handled the restaurant, and he worked 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. Might have took Christmas off, might have took another day off, but that was the level of dedication he had to it. He never left.
Yeah, no, it's intense. It's intense, and I've always kind of wondered about that, the food side of that place, because obviously, like I know it as like an iconic music venue, and I knew they served food. I think I've even eaten there, but I always like wondered like how. I guess in my head I'm like, I only see it when it's packed, but in my head I'm like, oh, why isn't this place just a music venue? Food is so hard. It's no different than like seeing these breweries all open restaurants now.
Yeah.
Like why?
Well, Avi, I think I lost your volume here.
It's like I was just saying about breweries where like they open restaurants. I never kind of understand why they go into such a harder business.
Well, first of all, the politics of it is, I think in order to have a bar, you have to serve food. And in Cambridge, that's how it was.
Yeah, I think that's true. Yeah.
The Middle East was first restaurant.
Okay.
Before it was live music venue. So the owners had a passion for food.
Got it.
They were Lebanese. They came from these family recipes that were really popular. They loved people. They fed people. That's just what they did.
Yeah.
but they struggled as a restaurant. You know, they struggled finding their making money and whatnot, and it probably would have failed eventually had they not started doing live music. The live music came later in the 80s, so then it evolved into music. But that's why the place looks the way it is it's a restaurant that turned into a live music venue. So they kind of morphed it. But like I said, one of the owners had a big passion for food. He loved serving it. The fact that it was a restaurant and a live music business kind of gave it more community aspect. They fed a lot of people. They did a lot of service stuff with it. The restaurant was the mask. You know what I mean? For all the chaos that went with the
yeah, that makes sense. That's kind of what I always assumed.
Yeah. I want to talk about menus because, you know, obviously I worked in Middle Eastern. It was Lebanese. Yours is Israeli food, but it's still Middle Eastern.
Without a doubt.
I'm curious, you know, it's chickpea. I mean, Lebanese, we use chickpeas. We have hummus and all this other stuff. Yeah. What's on your menu as far as like, what do you guys serve as popular?
Yeah, so I mean, I own a couple different spots. So the Chubby Chickpea is like traditional, what we call Israeli street food, but for sure you could call it Lebanese street food the same way. Yeah. Chopped salad, which ironically, so in Israel, they don't call it Israeli salad, they call it Arabic salad. You know, here, if you're of Israeli descent, you call it Israeli salad, but it's, you know, Arabic salad is what they call it in Israel. Falafel, shawarma. The thing is like so the Middle Eastern food culture sort of varies like country to country a little bit, except Israel. I mean, you got to think about like the politics, forget about like the conflict politics. If you just think about like the formation of the country, Israel's the most modern country by far. I mean, we've been a country for 73 years. And so we are like serving Lebanese food and Egyptian food and Jordanian food and Iraqi food, and it goes on and on and on. Turkish is where my family came from. So there's no doubt like Israel didn't invent this stuff. There's very, 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 very few foods that are specifically Israeli. I always tell people we serve what I would consider a Lebanese falafel, because in Israel they'll mix chickpeas and fava beans. Yep. But in Lebanon it's all chickpeas, and we serve an all chickpea falafel. So it wouldn't be incorrect to say that it's Lebanese. Our hummus is definitely way more garlicky, whereas like I think of Lebanese hummus as being like a little more on the lemon side. And then at Simcha, we serve like a totally modern, progressive take on Israeli cuisine. So I think that probably wouldn't resemble a Lebanese menu at all. Yep. But yeah, there's going to be a lot of similarities between. Do you do the kebabs? Lebanese. Do you have the kebabs? So we actually don't serve kebabs, but I mean, Israeli culture does. We just don't. Pain in the butt. Yeah, kind of a pain. Exactly, a pain, and it's like. It's tough on a food truck because the price I need to charge in order to make it worth it is probably a little more than you want to pay off a truck. And then operationally, it's a little bit of a pain. And then at Simcha, like we're serving completely modern, like kebabs feel like sort of outdated to me there. I mean, I'm not saying we never do. I think we had a swordfish kebab on the other day. But in general, we're not serving kebabs at Simcha. So the Middle East had a very extensive menu. I always told them to trim the menu down because it was too big. Yeah, it was huge. They had another restaurant inside it called Zuzu, which was a different menu, all Mediterranean. They kind of mixed Mediterranean styles with it. It was kind of all over the place at the point, you know what I mean? Because it was a live menu, it still needed to serve cheeseburgers, which was the number one selling item at the Middle East was a cheeseburger. It usually is. Like that's the funny thing is, it's like I do some restaurant consulting and stuff, and like I went into a place a couple of years ago. They had 200 seats. They had a 3-page menu. Which, like, I think I calculated, like, if you're a cook there, you had to know, like, 135 different pickups. And ultimately on their sales mix, they were selling chicken wings, bar pizzas, and burgers. And I was like, if you sold bar pizza, wings, and burgers, you'd be rich. Like, just get rid of the rest of the stuff. Yeah. Like, stop throwing food out. Stop training cooks to do all this other stuff. Just sell a lot of that other stuff. Yeah, we used to have those conversations. The Middle East now, because of COVID and reopening, they've trimmed their menu down. The chef finally retired. They had one chef. He was like 80 years old. This guy was a beast. He was just fast and just bulk. You know, he's one of those guys in the basement just going nuts. Chef George. Salute to Chef George. But, you know, yeah, I mean, used to read that all the time. Too many menu items, giving too many choices. But these were like family recipes that had been there for years. It was like
it was like children to them. They couldn't just get rid of it. And then they would like have someone that came all the way over there for this massage. And
that's what kills you though. Like, right. That's like, as a chef or as a restaurant owner, like that's the part that kills you, is that you're like, all right, I know we only sell 3 of these a month or whatever, but that represents Sarah, you know, who, like, Sarah used to come in here on Tuesday afternoons when I had nobody, like, you know, and it's like, if I get rid of that, I'm going to break Sarah's heart. And like, I know it's not the bit, but you know, at the end of the day, I always tell people, like, no one gets into food because they want to get rich off of it, or maybe they do foolishly, but no one succeeds in food trying to get rich off of it. It's about, like, do you have this desire to, like, create something that makes other people happy? And if you do, it is hard to sell even yourself on the idea that it's smarter to eliminate this item. It's like, there's a reason you want to cook that. Maybe it's because you think you make it better than everybody, or because there's this one customer that just loves it, or it reminds you of your grandmother, or whatever it is. So it is tough. It's because there's definitely menu science, but
and I studied that because, like, when I was GM, I really got into studying menu science.
Yeah.
And all the science was telling me, shorten the friggin' menu.
100%. Especially in your guys' position, where it's like, it's hard to accept. You know, that's where the business and the passion sometimes intersect in a funny way, is that it's like, if they take 10 steps back and look at it, they should be proud of the fact that they own, like, an iconic venue that, like, is legendary. I mean, legendary. And yet that their passion is to make this food. And so it's like, sometimes the common sense or the science behind it isn't what drives the bus. And we're all guilty of that, you know, in our own, like, there are things that I have on menus on places that don't make sense. And I know that. I'm honest with that but that's what I want to do. And at the end of the day, I work really hard, so I want to be able to sell that.
Right. Yeah. I used to always say, omit the logic.
That's
the Middle East, you have to omit the logic. Well, the biggest, the challenge was a live music venue. So you had people coming there for live music that didn't really care about Middle Eastern food.
Yep.
They just didn't.
Right.
And that was a bigger population than the people that were coming there just for the Middle Eastern food.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? For the menu. So you had to that was the balance of modernizing it and making it basic versus the tradition of what it was.
Right. And actually, like, kind of interesting from a restaurant perspective, because, like, I'm Middle Eastern. I grew up in a family that owned restaurants. I probably had performed at the Middle East 5 times before it dawned on me that you could order food there. Like, just wasn't a thing in my mind. Like, I knew it for one thing. And that's tough, because it's like, you know, especially when you add in some of the preconceived notions about Middle Easterners and Middle Eastern food. It's like, there's this balance, I imagine, from a business perspective, as to, do we want to draw those music customers into the restaurant, or do we want to let them sort of ignorant, like, ignorance is bliss, just think of this as like a dope spot to pack into a basement and watch cool up and coming acts and cool acts that are touring. So I imagine that that's probably a unique thing to be the GM of.
Yeah, it was incredibly challenging. And, you know, and as time went on, more nicer restaurants opened up in the area. Competition got food got more expensive. There was just a lot of factors playing it. And a lot of people don't think, hey, I'm going to get something to eat at the live music venue. It's kind of like, you know, like, maybe I don't want to eat there, you know, like, maybe
that pizza place next door did well off of you guys.
Yeah. What was the name of that one?
I'm trying to remember.
Hi-Fi.
Yeah, Hi-Fi. And then actually, you know what's funny? The falafel place around the corner used to have all, like, when your shows would end. Yeah.
That was great. I always used to hate going there because I felt guilty, but they made a better shawarma.
And it's kind of hilarious that, now that I think about it, that, like, that was, like, anyone that came out to, like, anyone I knew that, like, I could convince to come out to Cambridge, come to a show, as soon as, like, everything was all over and we're all, you know, we've been drinking and whatnot, it was like we'd go over there. It never, ever, ever occurred to me that I could probably get the same exact food right where we just were.
Yeah. No, I mean, that was a common misconception. Yeah. And then they had, once Hi-Fi went down, they had Clover open up.
Yep.
Again, started off as a food truck, turned into a chain.
So Clover's first food truck. Clover is an interesting one for me. My dad owned 17 different restaurants, never 2 at the same time. And his last project was a pizza truck at MIT. That was the job that like I worked when I was in high school and early college. And when he retired, he just gave the spot up. He didn't sell it or anything. That spot became Clover's first truck. And when the Chubby Chickpea was like a year and a half old, I was just sitting like it was the middle of the afternoon, we were dead. I was just sitting like, and I saw like a review on Yelp and I read it and they said, I would rather wait in line at Clover than walk into this place and get, it was like, it was rough. And I was like, what the hell is Clover? So I Googled them and saw they were a truck. And their whole motto at the time when they started was, it'll all be different tomorrow. And I thought that was so cool. And for me, just like mired in this rut of sitting in this like suburban 12-seat brick and mortar and serving the same 12 things every day, it was exciting. It was interesting. And that's what set me on the path to go to food trucks. And I tried to tell Air, the guy that owns Clover, that one time, but he's in his own lane, like to whatever.
I honestly, I mean, it was competition technically because it was Middle Eastern food. It's Middle Eastern food as well. It's a little.
Oh, don't get me wrong. We like no question. So Dewey Square is like the Mecca. Dewey Square is the Middle East. If you're a New England hip hop artist, you want to make it to the Middle East downstairs. If you're a food truck, you want to get on Dewey Square, like the plaza right across.
What is that Dewey Square?
It's the plaza right across from South Station.
Oh, okay.
So everyone knew that Clover, when the food truck game was first like getting hot, everyone knew Clover was like giving that organization, the Kennedy Greenway, like if not giving them money in donations, or whatever, at least paying them really well for this. And Clover had the name at that time. So we got turned down the first year that we tried to apply. Then the second year, we built up a name. We got on some list like for one of the best of Boston things. And they accepted our application. And one day a week, Clover was there 5 days a week, but we were there one day a week. And I used to count how many customers Clover would serve in us. And it was like about 3 or 4 months in, there it went, at first it was all them and little us, then a little more us, then a little, and then eventually it was hard for them to eat around us because our falafel's better and we served meat. Like that was just an interesting menu science choice, right? Was we served a vegan, uncross-contaminated, gluten-free falafel like them. And again, I think generally regarded as better, but then we also served meat. So it became hard for Clover to convince people to get in their line because chances are 5, 6 people are coming out of the office together. One of them is a vegetarian. And, if everyone's like, oh, I really want to eat falafel, they'd be like, well, let's just get in that line because I can eat chicken or, fried schnitzel or shawarma or whatever. And so we saw it, and it was probably about another year and a half before Clover left Dewey. And then eventually they stopped doing food trucks in general. So I do think it was competition, and I get that. I guess I viewed it as different. Like to me, I've always said, like, if you want to do exactly what I do and you want to pull up right next to me, food truck, or you want to open a brick and mortar next to me, I'm proud of what I do. Like, let's go and let's expand the pie. Shoot, like why don't you come open up right next to Simca, and we'll convince people that they got to come out to Sharon because the two of us are both popping. And to me, that was something that like Clover looked at differently. They also tried to not play with food trucks. When food trucks first became a thing, they tried to position themselves like we don't do the festivals, we're not rocking with these people. And in the end, there were names that emerged bigger than them. And so to me, I always felt like that was just an interesting sort of way to go about it. And for me, and this is why I was so excited to come on your podcast, was for me, I learned so much about business just from doing music and doing the shows. And it's like everything Richard Branson, who I'm a big fan of, says like every business is exactly the same. It's funny because I was talking to, I don't know if you remember my buddy Coco or Matt Cohn, but like he used to sort of manage me, and he actually is my COO now at Simca. He came out in June, and he always, when I was doing shows, you have sort of a tough exterior, plus like you were not to blow
back
you up,
then, definitely. Yeah,
but like not to like give you too big a head, but like were a little bit of a legend. Like you were people. If you wanted to do shows, you knew that you needed to rock with Leedz, and you needed Leedz to want to give you opportunity. So I said to him, like, I always used to give him a hard time about the fact that like he would sort of look at those interactions negatively. And I said to him, we were just talking about it today, and I was like, it's funny because as someone who owns businesses now, I look differently at at the game. And like, and I do believe the people that succeed, like, so Rosewood Bait, he's like, is Kevin is successful. He's not successful because he's the best. Like, he is dope. Like, his music's dope. He's got a great voice. He's successful. It's the same thing Millie's was talking about on your podcast, because they treat it like a business. Because today they try to get 40 people. Tomorrow they try to get 50 people. They promote it. They go out and they actively, I think your dude, Peter Parker, posted something the other day, a quote from Millie's about the fact, if you're an underground artist and you want to make it big, you're looking at $150,000 budget. It's a business, and food trucks were a business. And I think when it first started, a lot of the folks, a lot like the hip hop scene, a lot of the folks were just dreamers, and they didn't look at it like, okay, how do we get, we got rejected by Dewey this year. It's not because your food's not good, and making better food's not going to get you there. It's because you're not attracting the clientele they want. Your truck doesn't look the way they want it to. One of my buddies makes great food, but like, he had a half-naked pinup girl on the side of his truck. And the Rose Kennedy Greenway, all their neighbors are $1.5 million condos overlooking the harbor. The Greenway can't play with you. And there's these little things that it's just like, it's a business, no different than every business. And so like, I understood. I just think Clover, not to digress too much on the Clover, but I just thought Clover played the food truck game a little funny. And it is kind of interesting seeing, I imagine they're busy there next to the Middle East, but.
Well, here's the thing, and this was always the other issue, is when people are drunk and whatever, they just want comfort food.
That's the part that confused me.
What?
That's the part that kind of confused me, is like Clover.
Well, that's the problem. That was also the other problem with the Middle East. It's like, I'm drunk, let me get a thing of hummus. No, that's not what you're going to get.
Right.
You say hummus. Do I pronounce it wrong when I say hummus?
I think I say hummus sometimes. It depends on who I'm talking.
So you say hummus, I say hummus.
Exactly.
They don't want all these like weird Middle Eastern dishes. They want the cheeseburger. They want a slice of pizza. They don't want, that was what the Clover, it was busy sometimes, but those dishes were just, in my opinion, weren't the best for a drunk let out.
Right.
It was expensive too. It wasn't cheap, and it wasn't like a slice of pizza. Hi-Fi was packed, and I see this too because I deliver food, and I deliver a lot of unhealthy food. I hate to say it.
Yeah.
The United States, we eat horrible food all the time. The biggest companies are the worst food for you, probably. Sure. McDonald's and all this other stuff, and that's why I commend Middle Eastern. And what I really appreciate about working at the Middle East was the Mediterranean diet. A very healthy diet. If you eat the Mediterranean diet, you'll probably live longer. Now, it might not be covered in cheese and all this other crap, but it's better for you. You know what I mean? And I saw it with the owner. The owner was 75 years old, ate this stuff every day, worked harder, ran harder than most people a third his age. And he was very particular about how he ate, and ate very little meat. He ate some meat, but not a ton, and they all ate like that. It was like smaller meat. That's why I think it's healthier, right? Would you say that it's healthier because of less meat in the dishes than most?
Yeah. I think it's an interest. It's just like the Mediterranean diet, and all the studies on the Mediterranean diet are like, they're getting their proteins from things that aren't high in like the bad fats. They're not eating things that sort of kill our heart. Like, listen, I wish I'm around it all day. I wish I ate it more and ate less. When you cook for a living, it's like you get done with your adrenaline pumped service, and you go get pizza or a cheeseburger next door.
See, you want the cheeseburger.
Oh, listen, cheeseburgers. I love cheeseburgers. But
who doesn't love a cheeseburger? We just can't eat a cheeseburger every day. That's what I'm saying.
Agreed. Right. Moderation.
But people do. People do. No doubt.
Yeah. I remember the what was it? Super Size Me. That documentary, and I always just get so mad.
He ate it 3 times a day. Don't tell me something I don't know. If you eat McDonald's 3 times a day, no shit, you're gonna.
Right, and I used to get so mad about that documentary because people would quote it, and I was like, dude, McDonald's never made the claim that you should eat here all the time. No one ever said, and they certainly never made the claim that if you did, it would be healthy. So I just thought that was so unfair. I was like mad when I would see that documentary.
A lot of sesame. The Middle East would put a lot of sesame in certain things, and olive oil, not a lot of butter, a lot of oil, a lot of garlic. A lot of garlic
garlic
on top of garlic.
Yeah.
Middle East do you do whipped garlic?
We don't do, so that is a very Lebanese thing. Very, and I love it, but we don't make it.
They did that very well.
Yeah. Yeah.
It comes out so white that I thought that milk had to be in it or some type of cream, but it wasn't. It was just the way they whipped it. It was salad, beans, protein beans, rice,
grains. Yeah.
Lack of meat.
Less meat. For sure.
So yeah, I commend you for participating in your other restaurants. You expanded into these other restaurants. You've mentioned, so what was the name of the other one?
Simcha is sort of my flagship. So Simcha
is that Lebanese? Is Middle Eastern too?
So it's Israeli. It's like very modern, progressive, super like forward thinking Israeli cuisine, higher end. Like we have a full bar, wood oven. That place is like a cool date spot, anniversary spot.
So you also opened up, I forgot, you also got into beer trucks too.
Yeah, I have 3 of them. Yeah.
So now I know something about selling alcohol as well.
Yeah, for sure.
That is a very profitable business, you know. And how is that selling just, because I mean, I've sold alcohol in venues, but how is it selling it in a truck?
So so the cool thing about Tapped is, that's the name of the company, Tapped, is that we serve like private parties. So again, like when, private parties, your margins are already locked in. Like, what you're going to make. We do beer gardens. Again, like, Tapped is a good business.
What beer are you selling?
Whatever. So our clients pick basically anything that's being legally distributed in the state of Mass, including like there's a lot of breweries who we have relationships with who we can get like more exclusive stuff from. But basically, tons of craft beer for sure. And I would say like, that's just what the beer consumer wants these days. So we serve more craft beer than anything, but even that term is like kind of funny these days because it's like Sam Adams is craft beer, but no one thinks about that like that way anymore. Same thing, Harpoon. Like Harpoon's just an incredibly well-made craft beer, but no one's thinking of, people think that basically you get successful and people stop thinking you're craft. But
well, you get big. Like craft kind of makes it think like it's limited or it's niche or it's not nationally available. The Middle Eastern Harpoon was huge at the Middle East. That was like one of our number one things. We didn't go like into the technical, what you're saying, the craft. We went with the I can't believe I'm forgetting it. Boom sauce. Which one's boom sauce? Lord Hobo.
Lord Hobo, yeah.
Yeah, that one was really the only, I think, technical craft. Well, we had a couple others, but
the tough part is like, again, to bore people with the business, it's like the tough part is the less expensive the beer, chances are the more money you're making. So like, and craft beer is really tough because if you think about it, like Lord Hobo is a good business and they're a good size, but even still, like their economies of scale don't touch Anheuser-Busch. So they're selling you that can of beer for $3 and you can't really get more than 8 for it. So that's great that you're making $5 beer, but in terms of margins, that's not where you need to be making money, because at the end of the day, the lights, the cooler, you who's GM in the place, like all that's got to get paid. And so if Bud Light will sell me a beer for 70 cents or on draft 30 cents and I can get $4 for it, I'm better off feeding the 450 capacity crowd downstairs Bud Lights all night than I am getting them to drink Boom Sauce. And it's like the margins are killing me. Plus, I got to imagine, and this is, I don't have a bar of the size. I imagine you don't want people drinking Boom Sauce all night because then you're going to have a whole other set of problems.
I mean, we had all set of problems all the time, Boom Sauce and all. But the booms, you're right. This is these so-called craft beers. The alcohol percentage is significantly higher.
Yeah.
Growing up, me drinking, I don't drink anymore, but growing up drinking, beers didn't really break 6%. Like Natty Ice was like 5.9.
Right.
Like anything ice back when I was a kid, like. I say drinking as a kid. But,
I know what you mean. I say growing up sometimes like, too, and then I realize it sounds bad.
The ice beers, I was drinking as a kid, but it was the ice beers were as high as it got. Do you know when it shifted that you could sell beer higher than 6% alcohol? Because I don't remember that always being a thing.
So to be honest with you, I don't think, I could be wrong on this. I don't think it was like a regulation of what you could do. I think it's that like the craft beer culture sort of changed. So I would say a decade ago or so, it just started, because there were always like doubles and you know, but they were usually like
in restaurants.
Yeah. Or like
or
Belgian.
Bars.
I feel like you could get it right at a liquor store. Well, you're right about, I don't know about the bar regulation there, I guess, honestly. For me, I just think 10 years ago or so, it started with like these breweries that like, stuff wasn't in the bar. You just had to go to the brewery. And then once it became so popular, then all of a sudden, next thing you knew, and I got to imagine, like, I was a problem in my early 20s. I can't imagine, like, I remember one time walking out to a bar and realizing I'd had 16 beers, like, pre-gaming. I said to somebody, I'm like, dude, I had 16 beers and I feel completely sober. And then 3 gin and tonics later, I black out and I blame the gin and tonics. But can you imagine if we were out doing that kind of stuff with these? Like, I haven't been around college kids. What is the scene? Like, it must be dangerous, like really dangerous.
Well, that's, I think, why it was regulated at such a low rate, because I mean, I remember the same thing. I would drink a 30 rack of Bud Light and be like, I can drive.
Yeah.
Natty.
I've had some of those nights.
Natty Light, which is the big one. All the cheap beers, you know what I mean? It was water, and Miller Light and all these other things. But you're right.
See, I never knew that ice meant higher until you just said that. I didn't know that.
I'm pretty sure that's what it meant.
I think you're right. As soon as you said it, I'm like, oh, that makes sense. But I had never thought of it that way.
I used to get a case when I first started drinking. I was 15 years old. Get a case of Natty Light, $10. $10.
You were in New Hampshire, right?
3 of your friends could go in on that, for like $3.50 a piece, and then you're good for the night. Smoke a little weed, you're good. But yeah, I've been around people that had like 2 or 3 of these high end IPAs and they're puking.
Yeah.
So like. But I will say, the Middle East, the number one seller was that beer that you got on your hat, PBR, and
it's a great beer.
It was a $4 tall boy, 20 ounce, I think, right? Tall boy's 20 ounce.
That sounds right. Yeah, it's bigger than 16, right?
Or was it 16 ounce?
What's up?
I think it might be 16 ounce.
I think it's a 16 ounce can.
You're right, 16 ounce can. PBR, Narragansett, $4.
Both great beers.
Those flew. The boom sauce would sell, don't get me wrong, but not like those two.
Yeah. And by the way, Narragansett's a good example of a brewery that is craft. Like through and through, like you can go to their brewery, but no craft beer place, like no hipster attracting place is serving Narragansett as like its star. It's sort of like, again, the $4 can, like the ironic hipster, like that and a burger for $10 kind of deal. But like Narragansett, like sometimes you want a beer that tastes like a beer. Like every once in a while you want a beer that tastes like beer, not pine cone. I love IPAs, but like it gets old.
Well, I think it became a thing of, let me try this new beer or this cool new beer or da-da-da-da-da. It's something to do to get to drink around. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's like, it became this like, almost like a collective thing, like the same collector mentality of, I might collect all these records. I'm going to try all these beers. Yeah, I think it became like a thing to go do, something to do, I think. And people are intrigued by it. And they're making the cans look pretty cool nowadays. And, people think that had the money, they want to try different beers. They want to just have a different experience with a beer versus, hey, I'll grab the 12-pack of Heineken that I usually grab. It's cheap. Heineken in my day was the best beer you could buy, pretty much. Like, if you were drinking Heineken, that was like, you were upper class.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think Heineken was like one of the first like imported beers that was like kind of available and you could get. That was definitely I think the only times I used to drink Heineken were at the Western Front.
Yeah, and Red Stripe. You get the Red Stripes at the Western Front. I think I probably stuck to the Heineken. So then the other question is how do you, because you've been on PBS for your cooking here too. I'm reading it right here with Simply Ming with Chef Ming Tsai. Is that how you pronounce that?
Yeah, Ming Tsai. Ming Tsai is a Boston legend. So he owned a restaurant in Wellesley for like 25 years called Blue Ginger. And then up until the pandemic, he owned a place called Blue Dragon. I mean, I think he still does. I don't know if it's open or Blue Dragon. It's down in the Seaport, like in Fort Point. Okay. Ming Tsai he has a show called Simply Ming on PBS that's the longest running national cooking show in America. And I was lucky enough to be on season 17, which is cool because like I'm by far the least famous person. Like if you look through, like it's only heavy hitters. Jacques Pepin shot the episode before me. So that was a crazy experience. That was like the first time they put makeup on me. And I was like, you feel like you've arrived when they're putting makeup on you to shoot.
That's all it takes is a little makeup and we've arrived.
For me, that's how I felt. Yeah, very much so. Have you sat in a chair where people put makeup on you?
No, I've only put lotion on my face. That's about
yeah. See, like when you walk into the room and they go like, "Somebody get Avi some makeup," you're like, "I think I'm important now." Like I think that means that I'm really important. So but yeah, I was on that show. I was on. I've been obviously on Phantom a couple times, and I just started a sort of a production company of my own where we're doing so we're starting out with 2 shows. We're doing a show called Cooked, which is going to be like myself and Chef Dave Becker, who owns some Sweet Basil and Needham and Juniper and Wellesley. Him and I are going to basically have guest chefs come on and drink with us and like sort of tell war stories and then cook something from the fridge, like once they're nice and once they've had a few. And then I'm also doing like sort of a restaurant review show, sort of somewhere between like Bourdain and Fieri, like kind of like actually knowledgeable a little, not taking anything away. I mean, I think Guy Fieri is so important to the food world, to be honest, but like similar in the diners, drive-in dives ethos, just as far as like highlighting places that kind of don't get that shine. Like I think there's a lot of like places, a lot of immigrant-owned places that are just like making like dope food. Like there's a place like that you get a taco and you're like, this is legit, that won't make the top 50 BMAG list, or won't make, they're not like the known chef or something. Like I know for me, I used to look at like those lists and be like, this is kind of bullshit. Like why are these people getting the list? And then I started making the lists. Then I knew they were bullshit because like you look at them and you're like, they just like, they're paying attention to certain people. And I feel like I earned that. But at the same time, like there are people doing like really dope stuff who are never going to get that credit. There's like a Vietnamese restaurant in Canton Center that makes like great pho. And like no one's like people are going there and they're a legit business and they're making great food every day, but they're not like no one's checking on them. They're not going to make some list or whatever. And that's just because of whatever the criteria is, maybe because there won't be enough eyeballs in the article or whatever. So we're going to do a show sort of looking at that.
That's great. I think that's a great idea. Give light to the underdogs.
You should. So that show is basically each episode. There's gonna be like a guest that sort of like takes me to a place they like. So if you have any place that you're all about, like you should open my eyes.
Yeah, I'll give it some thought. I'm a pretty simple eater. I don't consider myself a foodie. I like simple food. Not that I'm
simple?
Against. I'm like like a burger, chicken. I'm not like I'm not like. I don't need a bunch of ingredients. I don't,
But see, to me, so like
the challenge with me is I'm gluten and dairy free because I have to be. So I have difficulty finding. That's why I like the Middle Eastern diet so much. I like Spanish diet so much because it's easy to do. But that's a challenge for me. I can't go super crazy because I'm limited.
Where's the last place you had great fried chicken?
Again, I can't eat fried chicken because it's not gluten-free.
But at Simca in Sharon, Massachusetts. So our fried chicken at Simca is dredged. So it's brined and then it's dredged in chickpea flour. So it's gluten and dairy free.
Wow, that's amazing. And I'll just tell you right now, from someone who can't eat fried chicken most of the time, that's awesome.
Yeah, so we have a lot of like gluten-free people who are like, I haven't had fried chicken in 12 years. And it's like juicy. It's dope. But my point is, like, we could go to a burger place. Like, my show isn't going to be about a bunch of or like food. To be honest, like, as a chef, and I think I speak for a lot of chefs, when people say like self-identify as a foodie, I think that like we read that as code for like you're a pain in our ass. Like, let me ask you a question. Like, do you think that we eat burgers and chicken like you, or you think that I'm going to like a foofy place if I get a chance to eat? Like, I love to, we cook certain foods because there's a game in trying to be the best and to be the best. But at the end of the day, I love to eat the food my dad cooks at home. Like to me, like my mom makes a great meatloaf and I love that meatloaf. Like and that's the kind of food I want to highlight, is that there's a place out there that's just like, they're not doing anything sexy, but every day their food is good. And there's something to be said about making a great burger every day. That's a talent.
Yeah. Well, like I said, you can't eat burgers every day.
No, making them every day.
Gravitate
not
towards
eating
burgers.
them every day. Yeah.
You know, but yeah, I mean, and you know, it's also eating in an expensive restaurant. Not everybody can do that. You know what I mean?
True.
And you know, more basic food that's more affordable food, I find, like we just talked about, the affordable beers, the affordable food, the food trucks, the stuff like that, is more realistic. And that's just kind of how I eat. I eat that way, you know. I mean,
right.
I wish to say I was a good cook at home, but I'm not.
I get it. But the pandemic, I think, highlighted the fact that, you know, at the end of the day, it's great to get on PBS and it's cool to make these lists and all that. But like the successful businesses are the people that are catering to customers, that have that are affordable, that are consistent. You know, because at the end of the day, those are the places. Pizza shops were up 30% during COVID.
Delivery. Yeah,
delivery, and the fact that people are like, look, if I can get, you know, people that don't want to cook at home are like, if I can get dinner for the family at a certain price, I'll just order it, you know, and I'll go do that. As opposed to like the places where we're like, well, if we're not filling our dining room every night and getting you to drink at least 2 drinks, then we're screwed. You know, for me, the chickpea did all right and Simca hurt. And that's just kind of what it is in the restaurant business. So.
Right. Well, people are still, his hesitation of eating inside still with COVID, even with the vaccine and everything. I feel bad for you in that scenario, because I know it's been tough, you know, for dining restaurants.
It's been rough for shows too, hasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty much, you know, I'm not, you know, I'm helping out promote some shows, but you know, I tried booking some things, and it was just like there's hesitation, Delta variant, and people don't want to get the vaccine, and the venues are requiring the vaccine. So if you mix all of that together, it's not going to do as well.
Right.
You know, it shows that, and nor do I want to jump into public controversy and have these conversations over and over and over again. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to step away, let this thing kind of iron out. I'm down to help anybody promote an event if they got an event, but as far as me being the forefront of this, I'm like, hey.
See, I'm with you there. It's funny because I think like that's another thing where like our businesses have something in common is I have my opinions, my personal, what works for me and my family, whatever. Right. But it is tough because it's like, as a business, like if you go out there and you hardcore recruit, like in light of the regulations, there are people who on both sides of every aisle who will feel like that's you, right? Like if you made me do something and come to your show, it's like all of a sudden the Leedz brand is like forcing me to do, and it's like, listen, man, like there's regulations for stuff. Like I felt like, so Sharon, where I grew up, I live, and where my restaurant is, or my 2 restaurants, I have actually a barbecue spot too there. They
were a barbecue as well.
I have a barbecue place, called All Ash. But I have 5 spots. But
damn, how do you have time for a family with all that?
Dude, it's all about managing your time, trusting your team, and sort of like prioritizing the things that matter, I guess. But
do you must have a really good team.
I have a great team, yeah.
Yeah, I do have a really great team. That was the key for me when, you know, in the end of the Middle East, before shit got crazy, it was really crazy. I had a really, really good team. And when you have a good team, you can have other things in life.
See, what's funny
you get stuck doing it.
See, what's funny is back to the whole like learning business thing is like, you know, I probably talk about, like when I'm training managers and stuff, like I'm talking sometimes about the sign business because I was in that in real estate. Sometimes I'm talking about the music business. And the thing is, like, what I try to take something out of everything I ever do. So like, I'm never going to be a famous rapper. And like, I look at like people that made it who I was around and who I thought I was more talented than. But I look at it and go, look, what I learned, like I used to watch the way you ran a business. And like, to me, that was something at a pretty early on I caught on to. And so it's funny, you talk about your team, and it's like, I remember when you wouldn't see Leedz at every show anymore. And then you would realize there were 2 or 3 shows happening, and that he had people he trusted who could sort of, and that's, I mean, you had managers, you had people who like, this person's job was to run this show. And it doesn't take a dummy to realize, all right, if there's something at the Middle East downstairs tonight, there's something at the Western Front, and there's something at Great Scott, Leedz is going to be at the Middle East downstairs. There's going to be somebody at this other show. And And those people, like, they represented your brand. They became who you would deal with as an artist about stuff. And like, that's how a team works. That's how a business gets built. So for me, I actually always felt like I wish that, the phrase, like, if I could go back and know what I know now, like, I think I look at some of these people and how they move, and I'm like, sometimes, like, how the quality of the team, it's just like any business. The quality of your team is how far you'll go. And Dave Becker, who, again, he owns Sweet Basil and Needham, which is like, they've been there 25 years. They're iconic. He taught me early in the Chubby Chickpea's history. I said to him one day, I'm like, yo, Dave, like, how is it you can stand out front on a Saturday night and talk to your guests and everything's always dope? And he was like, if you make this about you and it's all you call all the shots, it's your, and everything's your dream, then you have to carry all the water. If you let other people share in that, you let them drive the car with you, you let them, then they'll carry it too. And, it's all about, so to me, it's like my team knows that when it's battle time, like, I'm the first one to pick up a sword, but they also know that, like, not everything's what Avi calls. Like, we are a team. We are, and we make decisions together and by consensus. And, so I have a COO and a business director of business development and an operations manager. And then I have culinary leads, and they know that it's my spot. I mean, I'm the one writing the checks, but they also know that, like, that they can help direct where we go, and not everything is always mine. And that's why I keep opening spots, because there's people on my team who have put so much into what I've done that, like, when it's their turn, sometimes they want the keys, and I can't give them Simca if I want to stay the executive chef of Simca. So then we got to open, like, we're opening a spot in Chestnut Hill, and we're opening a spot in Brighton right now. And, like,
where in Brighton?
So in Brighton, it's at the Speedway, where Notch just opened their brewery. It's 525 Western Ave.
Okay, yeah. So you're right on the line there. You're right on the Cambridge line.
Yeah, pretty close, right there. Yep, Watertown, Cambridge, Brighton. I thought of that as Alston when I signed the league, but I saw that the address was Brighton.
Yeah, Alston, Brighton, same thing.
So right, I think of, like, so I used to live in Brighton Center, so I think of that area down on Western as all Alston, but I guess after a certain point it goes back to Brighton. But and then in Chestnut Hill, we're opening a spot right next to the Star Market, like, literally right there. So that's gonna be cool. But again, it's just like a lot of these projects are driven by the fact that there are people on my team who, it's their time, and they have to sort of do it.
That's great, man. Someone always told me, always train someone to do your job better than you, so you don't have to do it anymore.
That's the idea. That's the idea.
I got that a little too late. My operation never grew, because it was music and kind of niche, and the politics of the live entertainment in Boston. I was never really able to grow like you, which was one of the more frustrating things, because I hit ceilings that I couldn't really. That's why I became a GM at a nightclub, because that was the only really way I could go. I couldn't throw events at the House of Blues, political wise, but that's great to see you grow and evolve, and hopefully you still make some music with all
so I put a recording studio in the basement of Simca, my restaurant in Sharon.
Of course you did.
And this dude, actually, do you know Ronnie? So he knows his brother-in-law. I'm blanking on dude's name. He's a producer. I can't remember. I'll remember it as soon as we're off. But this dude, Ronnie Caggiano,
I know him.
Yeah, so Ronnie and I, so we both live in Sharon, and we were actually on, like, a school council together. And so, like, we got to talking, and we both had a love of hip hop, and then we kind of realized that, like, we were both probably around the same time, like, and he plays the drums, and he has, like, the full setup, and I had the space, and I was like, I wanted, just from an energy perspective, a lot of the spots I used to record at were, like, in the basement of some place. Some guy had a studio. So we put a studio in the basement of Simca, and we did it this past season, and I was slammed. So I was like, all right, when November 1 comes, like, I've just sort of been, anything I write, I'm just like, all right, we're going to get in and just do a project. So I'm definitely going to record something new. It's been a few years since I recorded, but I write. I mean, that's still, it's like, it's either that or drinking too much. Like, and I prefer to write. I mean, I do both, but sometimes, but I love to write. I've been doing this since I was 8 years old, and it matters to me.
Well, good, man. Hey, Avi, this has been great. I got to wrap this up, man. It's really been great talking to you, man. I mean, your evolution. I mean, I've heard, like I said, from becoming just a rapper coach, you become a restaurateur, businessman, chef. It's amazing. Inspiring story, man.
I appreciate it, and I appreciate you. And like I said, I learned so much back in those days, so it's cool to come full circle and sit down and talk to you about it. So
it's great, man. I want to thank everybody for tuning in to Leedz Edutainment podcast, brought to you by the Chubby Chickpea with Chef Avi Shemtov. Thank you, brother.
Thank you, man. Bye.
Okay.